French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Washington today to begin meetings with President Trump. Tomorrow, Macron will be the guest of honor at Mr. and Mrs. Trump's first state dinner. And Wednesday, he'll speak to a joint session of Congress. But as Nick Schifrin reports, the pomp and circumstance come as a major deadline looms for the Iran nuclear deal.
With the stars and stripes and the French tricolor side by side, Macron launched what he called a critical mission.
This is a great honor, and I think a very important state visit, given the moment of our current environment.
Macron will spend 2 days with President Trump on what some have called Operation Save the Iran Deal. Yesterday, he appeared on President Trump's chosen channel, Fox News, and said there was no alternative.
What is the what-if scenario, or your plan B? I don't have any plan B for nuclear against Iran.
Macron has met President Trump 3 times and cultivated a good relationship. He'll try and convince President Trump the deal is working and that it's better to confront Iran while its nuclear program is frozen. That argument will be echoed later this week during a visit by German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who appeared yesterday on Israeli TV.
We believe it's better to have this agreement, even if it's not perfect, than to have no agreement.
But the Trump administration wants to remove the deal's expiration dates, expand inspections, and target Iran's missile program. The administration also wants to confront what it calls Iran's malign regional behavior. Iran says there will be no renegotiation, and Foreign Minister Javad Zarif warned if the Trump administration pulls out of the deal, Iran will too.
The rest of the world cannot ask us to unilaterally and one-sidedly implement a deal that has already been broken.
President Trump is vowing to pull out of the deal by May 12th, unless the U.S. and Europe can fix it. A U.S. official calls this moment, quote, the last chance.
And Nick Schifrin joins me now. Nick, so the Trump administration has basically set this up as the last chance to make the deal work for the U.S. Meanwhile, the Europeans are working to try to keep President Trump in the deal. Have they made progress?
Yeah, there has been a little of progress, and I think Macron will come to the White House with specific items that the two sides have been working on and the two sides have agreed in general on, not so much specific text, but in general. And that includes inspections. So the two sides have said, look, yes, if there is a legitimate inspection request to Iran and they refuse it, then that is a significant abrogation of the deal, and we're allowed to reimpose sanctions. Number 2, missiles. If Iran tests a long-range missile over 1,200 miles, then the two sides can also impose sanctions together. And on the larger regional concerns, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, actions in Syria, for example, proxies like Hezbollah, cyber threats. These are the things that the two sides basically have general agreement on, and Macron will go to the White House and say, look, this is what we can do together to pressure Iran.
So where are the sticking points right now in that deal? I noticed you didn't mention expiration dates we've heard so much about, right?
Right. The sunset clauses, the expiration dates, that is the sticking deal. And that's the most important part, because that is exactly what President Trump and the White House want to change. So after 8 years, Iran's allowed to slowly manufacture increasingly advanced centrifuges. After 15 years, they can increase their uranium stockpile and enrich higher-grade uranium. And so what the U.S. says is, hey, if they do those things, that will lower the breakout time under about a year for Iran to get a bomb, and we want to impose sanctions. The Europeans say, well, wait a minute. We agreed to this already in the deal. We agreed explicitly that they would have the ability to do those things after 8 years and after 15 years. How can we abrogate the deal, basically, by saying they can't do those things? And so what Macron will come to the White House and say is, look, we know we have some disagreement on sunsets, but can we take this package? Can we take the things that we agree on, and is this enough? You know, President Trump, is this enough for you to say, yeah, this is enough, let's stay in the deal? The Europeans do not want to do this every 6 months. They don't have a lot of faith, I will say, that this is going to work, but they're going to try.
So we're watching closely on that. It's fair to say probably Iranian officials are also watching this very closely. They have to be considering what their options will be if the U.S. backs out. What's been the response so far? Yeah, so Javad Zarif, the foreign minister who you saw in our story, came to New York recently, met with people like me, met with a group of journalists, met with NGO types, trying to influence U.S. behavior. And what he says is, look, there's no renegotiation. So any chance of renegotiating the sunsets, for example, don't even try.
And he says, if you leave the deal, we've got a few options. One is we'll go through the process that the deal allows, which is a 45-day debate, after which presumably Iran would be allowed to enrich uranium. The second option is we're not even going to wait for those 45 days. We're going to enrich uranium immediately. And he admitted that there were more drastic measures, as he called it. He didn't provide the details, but you can see this in the debate in parliament in Iran, in the media. These include declaring the U.S. Army a terrorist organization, and then a package of options which are withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, enriching past 20%, basically enriching higher grade uranium, and kicking out the inspectors. And those options mean Iran's racing toward a bomb. And they admitted that that's what they're considering. Iran is not a monolith. And I think President Rouhani would be the first to say he wants this deal to work. But he's under incredible domestic pressure to have the response to any U.S. departure from the deal to be aggressive.
So turn with me now to North Korea for a second. Officials there have to be watching these talks with great interest too. How does U.S. action or inaction on the Iran deal affect the ongoing talks with the North Koreans?
Yeah, this is really important, right? Because in the next few weeks they'll get a meeting between President Moon and Kim, the North Korean and South Korean leaders, and of course President Trump with Kim next month or in early June. And what Iran says is, look, why would the North Koreans or anyone trust you if you're going to pull out of a deal that we took years to negotiate? And what the U.S. response is interesting. So Mike Pompeo went to North Korea secretly to meet with Kim Jong-un. After he came back, he was testifying to Congress. He says, no, Kim does not care about any deal that came before this. So the administration, at least, believes that they can pull out of the Iran deal and have it not affect the upcoming North Korean conversation.
We'll see what happens then. Nick Schifrin, good to talk to you.
Thank you.